The photo was still warm from the printer when Sarah Mitchell slapped it down on the security desk. My face stared back at me from the page, and underneath it, someone had scrawled in red marker, "Do not let him back in. Not employee. Not Mike Patterson. Just a threat taped to laminate. I'm Mike Patterson, 52 years old, and I just spent the last 20 minutes getting fired from Apex Systems after 15 years of keeping their defense contracts from falling apart." The woman from HR was still talking about realignment and strategic vision, but I wasn't listening anymore. I was staring at that photo and calculating how long it would take them to realize what they'd just done. They thought they were cutting dead weight. What they'd actually done was sever the only connection between their $450 million merger and the Pentagon cybersecurity approval system. See, here's what nobody at Apex understood about my job. I wasn't just some IT guy who knew where the servers lived. I held Defense Department cybersecurity clearance level 7 that took 18 months to get, including a psychological evaluation that made Navy boot camp look like summer camp. When Blackstone Dynamics needed someone to verify their acquisition compliance met federal standards, they didn't need just any signature, they needed mine. And now I was standing in the parking lot holding a cardboard box with 15 years of my professional life stuffed inside it, watching them tape my mugshot to their front desk like I was some kind of corporate terrorist. The whole mess started 6 months ago when Caleb Washington showed up as the new COO. Kid was 29, wore suits that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and had that startup energy that mistakes confidence for competence. His dad was the CEO, which explained how someone who needed GPS to find the server room ended up running operations for a defense contractor. I should mention something about my background. I spent 8 years in the Navy, most of it in cybersecurity for the Pacific Fleet. You learn things in the military they don't teach in business school, like how security protocols exist for reasons that go way beyond corporate policies, like how one weak link can bring down systems that keep people alive. When I got out in 2003, defense contracting was the logical next step. Apex Systems was smaller then, family-owned, run by people who understood that government work requires precision. We built secure networks for military bases, encrypted communication systems for defense contractors, the kind of infrastructure that keeps classified information from ending up in the wrong hands. I worked my way up from junior systems analyst to senior systems architect. Not the fastest career track, but solid. The kind of progression that comes from actually knowing what you're doing instead of just talking like you do. The Pentagon clearance came in 2015. Apex needed someone certified for Level 7 cybersecurity protocols to handle a new contract with naval intelligence. The background check took 6 months. They interviewed neighbors I'd forgotten I had, called references from high school, probably knew my blood type and my mother's maiden name by the time they were done. But it was worth it. Level 7 clearance meant I could work on classified systems, handle encrypted data transfers, and sign off on security protocols that regular contractors couldn't touch. It also meant I became indispensable for any major defense-related deals. Which brings us to the Blackstone merger. Blackstone Dynamics was everything Apex wanted to be. Bigger contracts, better connections, Pentagon work that went beyond routine IT support. They built systems for missile defense, satellite communications, the kind of projects that make defense contractors rich. The merger made sense on paper. Apex had the cybersecurity expertise, Blackstone had the high-level contracts. Together, they could bid on projects worth hundreds of millions. But merging two defense contractors isn't like combining software companies. You've got federal compliance protocols, DoD security requirements, and about 47 different ways the government can shut you down if you screw up the paperwork. That's where I came in. The bridge between Apex's existing security framework and the Pentagon's requirements for the merged entity. Not glamorous work, but the kind that keeps you from ending up in congressional hearings explaining why classified data ended up on unsecured servers. Caleb called it modernizing our legacy infrastructure. I called it dismantling systems that actually worked so he could replace them with whatever buzzword was trending on LinkedIn that week. The kid had ideas: outsource more functions, streamline operations, eliminate redundancy. He threw around phrases like right-sizing and agile methodologies in meetings where we were discussing systems that handled classified defense contracts. I tried explaining why you can't just outsource cybersecurity to the lowest bidder when you're dealing with Pentagon data. How federal compliance isn't something you can automate with the latest app. How some redundancy is actually called backup systems and exists to prevent catastrophic failures. Caleb would nod and smile and take notes, then go back to his office and schedule another meeting about operational efficiency. The morning it happened, I was running compliance checks for the final phase of the Blackstone merger. Everything was lined up perfect. Months of paperwork, security audits, and federal sign-offs all leading to one moment, my authorization code hitting the DoD verification system. Without that code, the merger couldn't close. The government doesn't mess around when it comes to defense contractors. You either have the right clearance with the right credentials, or you don't get to play in their sandbox. Simple as that. I was scheduled to submit the final authorization in 96 hours when Sarah from HR knocked on my cube. She had that look people get when they're about to deliver bad news and pretend it's good for you. Mike, can we chat privately? Translation: prepare for impact. They led me into a conference room like I was carrying a contagious disease. No water, no small talk, just a manila envelope slid across the table like a ransom note. Sarah sat across from me with another HR person I didn't recognize. Some guy with dead eyes and a clipboard. Inside the envelope was 3 pages of corporate speak that boiled down to, "Your services are no longer required." They used phrases like organizational restructuring and strategic realignment to dress up the fact that Caleb had convinced his father I was dead weight. The best part? Caleb didn't even show up. Sent his HR team to do the dirty work while he was probably in some other meeting explaining how eliminating legacy positions would streamline operations and boost quarterly metrics. "We appreciate your years of service," Sarah said, reading from what was obviously a script. "Your final paycheck will include accrued vacation time and COBRA information for health insurance continuation." I signed the papers without argument. No point in making a scene. After 15 years, I knew exactly how this company operated. They'd made their decision weeks ago, probably in some executive meeting where I wasn't even mentioned by name, just listed as redundant personnel on a spreadsheet. But here's what they didn't know about my Pentagon clearance. It wasn't transferable. When I walked out that door, my authorization codes died with my employment. The system was designed that way for security reasons. You can't just hand off level 7 clearance like passing a baton in a relay race. I packed my stuff into a cardboard box, coffee mug, family photos, the small American flag I kept on my monitor from my Navy days. 15 years of professional life reduced to items that fit in a box you'd use to ship books. The walk to the parking lot felt surreal. People I'd worked with for years suddenly found their computer screens fascinating when I passed their desks. A few gave apologetic nods, but nobody said anything. Corporate layoffs have a way of making everyone act like witnesses to a crime they don't want to get involved in. I sat in my truck for about 10 minutes, engine running, staring at that photo taped to the security desk through the lobby windows. Then I pulled out my phone and opened the encrypted app tied to my DoD credentials. The deletion process required 3 confirmations and a security code sent to my personal device. I entered each step carefully, thinking about the 6 months of work that was about to become impossible to complete. Final confirmation, authorization key deleted, change irreversible. Timestamp, 4:23 p.m., Friday, March 15th. I didn't smile, didn't feel vindicated or angry or anything really. Just drove home thinking about how they were probably in some conference room right now, high-fiving over their streamlined operations and cost savings. The reality wouldn't hit them until Monday morning when Blackstone ran their scheduled compliance verification and the Pentagon system came back with authorization not found. That weekend, I did something I should have done months ago. I registered Steelbridge Solutions LLC online. The name felt right. I'd spent my career building bridges between military requirements and corporate capabilities. Now I'd be doing it on my own terms. The filing fee was $125. Business license took another $75. By Sunday afternoon, Mike Patterson wasn't just an unemployed IT guy anymore. I was a cybersecurity consultant with specialized government clearance. Well, former clearance. But they didn't know that yet. I spent Sunday evening updating my LinkedIn profile and reaching out to my network. The defense contracting community is smaller than people think, especially at the level 7 clearance level. Word travels fast when someone with my credentials becomes available. By Sunday night, I had 3 messages from recruiters and a missed call from a guy I knew at Raytheon. The defense industry runs on relationships, and I'd spent 15 years building mine quietly while Apex's leadership focused on golf outings and corporate retreats. Monday morning brought the storm I'd been expecting. The first call came at 7:15 a.m. Unknown number, which usually meant either spam or someone having the worst Monday of their professional life. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. And again. I was sitting at my kitchen table with coffee and the morning news, scrolling through job boards and trying to figure out how long my savings would last. The mortgage payment was due in 2 weeks. Health insurance through Cobra would cost $800 a month. 15 years of steady employment doesn't prepare you for the financial reality of sudden unemployment. The third voicemail was from Tony Brooks, Apex's CFO. His voice had that tight quality people get when they're trying not to panic in public. Mike, hey, look, we've got a small technical issue with the Blackstone verification system, and I was wondering if you could give me a quick call back. Nothing major, just need to clarify some procedural details. Call me as soon as you get this. Small technical issue. Right. The fourth call was from Jordan Walsh, my former assistant. She was 24, fresh out of college with a degree in computer science, and sharp enough to understand systems that confused people twice her age. Unfortunately, she was also the CEO's niece, which meant she got blamed for nepotism, even though she'd earned her position through competence. Her text was more direct. Mike, something's wrong with the DoD verification portal. It keeps rejecting our authorization requests. Caleb's freaking out and blaming it. It's blaming the government servers. Everyone's pointing fingers. Did something happen with your clearance? I texted back, clearance terminated when employment terminated. Might want to check Clause 12B of the merger agreement. Her response was immediate. What's Clause 12B? I didn't answer immediately. Let them figure it out on their own first. Clause 12B was buried on page 47 of the original merger agreement, hidden in the subsection about personnel transition requirements. I'd flagged it months ago during my initial review, but nobody at Apex bothered reading past the executive summary. Termination of named cybersecurity liaison without formal substitution and recertification voids compliance authorization and suspends acquisition proceedings pending federal review. Plain English, fire me without finding someone else with Pentagon clearance, and your $450 million deal turns into very expensive paperwork. By 10 a.m. Monday, the panic was spreading through Apex like a virus. Jordan kept me updated via text, probably because she was the only person there who understood the technical implications of what was happening. Legal found the clause. They're screaming at HR about due diligence. Caleb's locked in his office. His assistant says he's been on the phone with lawyers for 2 hours. Blackstone's compliance officer called. They want an emergency meeting this afternoon. I finished my coffee and decided to take a drive. Funny how unemployment gives you time to notice things you miss when you're rushing to work every morning. The trees were starting to bud, spring coming early this year, birds building nests in places that would be disturbed by summer construction projects. Around noon, I got my first direct contact from Apex management. Not a phone call. They were too smart for that. A LinkedIn message from Tony Brooks, trying to sound casual. Hey Mike, hope you're doing well. Quick question about some technical documentation handover. Could we grab coffee sometime this week? Nothing urgent, just want to make sure we have all the compliance protocols properly documented. I screenshot the message and forwarded it to my lawyer, Patricia Hendricks. She specialized in employment law and defense contracting, had helped me incorporate SteelBridge solutions over the weekend. Her response was immediate. They're fishing. Don't respond yet. Let them sweat. Patricia was right. This wasn't about documentation. This was about them realizing they'd severed their only connection to Pentagon approval and trying to figure out how to reconnect it without admitting they'd made a catastrophic mistake. The afternoon brought more desperate outreach. A formal email from Apex's legal department, CCing half the executive team, requesting an urgent consultation regarding ongoing compliance matters. They offered $500 per hour for my time, which would have been flattering if I didn't know they were probably billing Blackstone 10 times that for the same consultation. Then Caleb himself tried calling. I let it go to voicemail, curious to hear how the golden boy would handle his first real crisis. His voice was strained, trying to maintain executive authority while clearly scrambling. Mike, this is Caleb Washington. I think there may have been some miscommunication about the transition process for your role. I'd like to discuss how we can resolve any technical issues that might have arisen. Please call me back at your earliest convenience. Miscommunication, technical issues. The kid still couldn't admit what had actually happened. By Tuesday morning, the story was starting to leak beyond Apex's walls. Someone at Blackstone, probably their compliance officer, Colonel Martinez, had contacted other defense contractors about emergency cybersecurity consulting. Word travels fast in our industry, especially when a major merger hits compliance problems. A guy I knew from my Navy days, now working at Lockheed Martin, sent me a direct message. Heard through the grapevine that Apex stepped on a landmine. You okay? There's talk about emergency contract opportunities if you're available. That's when I knew the situation was bigger than just Apex's internal panic. Blackstone Dynamics wasn't just another defense contractor. They had active Pentagon contracts worth over $2 billion annually. If this merger collapsed, it would trigger review of all their existing agreements. Other companies were already positioning themselves to pick up the pieces. Wednesday brought an escalation I hadn't expected. A courier delivered a package to my house, overnight priority, signature required. Inside was a formal letter from Apex's board of directors, not the management team. The letter was signed by CEO Washington himself, Caleb's father. It offered immediate reinstatement at senior director level, 40% salary increase, stock options, and what they called executive-level operational authority. Reading between the lines, they were offering to make me Caleb's boss. But the most interesting part was the timeline. They needed my response within 48 hours to meet Blackstone's compliance deadline. I called Patricia. They're offering me Caleb's job. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I don't want a job anymore. I want a business. That afternoon, I drafted a response through Patricia's office. Professional, polite, and absolutely devastating. Mr. Patterson appreciates the board's revised offer. However, SteelBridge Solutions LLC is no longer seeking employment arrangements. We specialize in cybersecurity consulting for defense contractors requiring Pentagon compliance authorization. Services available on a contract basis only. Current availability limited due to high demand. We included a rate sheet that would have made their accountants weep. $20,500 per hour for emergency compliance consulting. $50,000 minimum engagement fee. 6-month retainer required for ongoing services. Patricia added a subtle legal touch. Please note that restoration of Mr. Patterson's Pentagon authorization requires formal reapplication through DoD channels, with typical processing time of 120 days for Level 7 clearance reinstatement. 3 months minimum, even if everything went perfectly. Their 96-hour deadline was already blown, and now they were looking at a timeline that would stretch well into summer. We sent the response at 4 p.m. Wednesday. By Thursday morning, my phone was ringing constantly. Apex, Blackstone, 3 different law firms, and 2 other defense contractors who'd somehow gotten wind of the situation. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I drove to Home Depot and bought materials for that deck project I'd been putting off. Sometimes the best strategy is to let other people panic while you build something useful with your hands. The real call came Thursday afternoon, not from Apex or their lawyers, but directly from Blackstone Dynamics. Colonel Martinez called me directly at 3:30 Thursday afternoon. No corporate intermediaries, no legal department screening, just one military professional calling another. Mr. Patterson, this is Colonel Martinez with Blackstone Dynamics. I believe we need to have a conversation. His voice was calm, direct, the kind of tone you develop when you've dealt with real crises instead of corporate theatrics. I liked him immediately. Yes, sir, I imagine we do. I've been briefed on the situation with Apex Systems. From what I understand, you hold the only Pentagon clearance capable of completing our merger compliance requirements. That's correct. Level 7 cybersecurity authorization with DoD verification protocols, and that clearance was terminated when Apex ended your employment. Standard security protocol, sir. Non-transferable credentials tied to individual employment status. There was a pause. When he spoke again, I could hear him choosing his words carefully. Mr. Patterson, I'm going to be direct with you. This merger isn't just about 2 companies combining operations. Blackstone has active Pentagon contracts worth $2.1 billion annually. We provide cybersecurity infrastructure for missile defense systems, satellite communications, naval intelligence networks. If this acquisition fails, it triggers mandatory review of all our existing agreements. I understood what he wasn't saying. Failure here meant more than just a blown business deal. It meant potential disruption of active military operations. What are you proposing, Colonel? I'd like to meet in person. Discuss how SteelBridge Solutions might help us resolve this situation. Are you available tomorrow morning? We agreed to meet at a coffee shop in Columbus, halfway between his office and my house. professional neutral ground where we could talk without corporate lawyers recording every word. Meanwhile, Apex was imploding. Jordan's updates painted a picture of complete organizational chaos. Emergency board meeting lasted 6 hours. Caleb got fired, like actually fired by his own father. Tony Brooks announced his resignation. Says he's too old for this stress and doesn't want his name attached to the fallout. Legal department is working around the clock trying to find alternative compliance pathways. They've contacted 3 other consulting firms, but nobody has your level of clearance. Stock price dropped 15% today. Financial blogs are calling it compliance crisis triggers executive shakeup. Friday morning, I drove to Columbus feeling like I was heading to the most important job interview of my life, except I wasn't interviewing for a job anymore. I was negotiating as an equal. Colonel Martinez was everything I'd expected from his voice. Mid-50s, gray hair, the kind of posture that never fully leaves the military. He was already seated when I arrived, reading what looked like technical specifications on his tablet. "Mr. Patterson." He stood and shook hands like he meant it. "Thank you for making the drive." "My pleasure, sir." We ordered coffee and got straight to business. No small talk, no corporate pleasantries, just 2 professionals who understood the stakes. "Here's our situation," he said, pulling out a folder. "Blackstone needs this merger to close within the next 45 days, or we forfeit our primary Pentagon contract. The weapon systems we support don't have backup providers. Failure isn't just bad business. It's a national security issue." He slid a document across the table. "But we're not interested in working with Apex management anymore. The way they handled your termination demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of how defense contracting operates." I scanned the proposal. It was more than I'd expected and exactly what I'd hoped for. Direct contract between Blackstone and SteelBridge Solutions. I would handle all cybersecurity compliance for the merged entity, report directly to Blackstone's board, and essentially become their chief cybersecurity officer without the corporate politics. The numbers made my coffee go cold. $1.2 million initial contract for merger completion, $800,000 annual retainer for ongoing compliance management, stock options in the merged company, and a 5-year exclusive consulting agreement that would make me financially independent well before retirement. "There's one condition," Martinez added. "We want your recommendations for rebuilding Apex's security team. Clean house. Bring in people who understand government work." I thought about Jordan, brilliant and capable despite being painted as a nepotism hire. About the other competent people buried under layers of management that couldn't distinguish cybersecurity from social media passwords. "I can work with that, sir." We shook hands across the table. No lawyers, no corporate contracts department, just 2 military veterans who understood the value of keeping your word. The paperwork took 2 weeks to finalize. During that time, Apex's stock continued falling, 3 more executives resigned, and the board brought in crisis management consultants who charged $500 per hour to explain how badly they'd mishandled the situation. By month's end, SteelBridge Solutions had signed its first major contract. I was back in the Apex building, not as an employee, but as Blackstone's cybersecurity consultant overseeing the acquisition. They'd taken down my photo from the security desk. Caleb was long gone, last I heard trying his luck with a fintech startup in Austin. The new management team was competent, professional, and smart enough to listen when someone with Pentagon clearance explained how defense contracting actually worked. Jordan got promoted to senior systems coordinator. Turns out competence trumps nepotism when you're dealing with people who understand the difference. As for me, I'm writing this from my home office, looking out at the deck I finally finished building. The coffee's still hot, my phone isn't ringing with emergencies, and my biggest decision today is whether to take on another consulting contract or spend the afternoon working in my garden. 15 years of being invisible, and all it took was one deleted authorization key to remind everyone who really built the bridge. Sometimes the best revenge is just stepping aside and letting people discover how much they needed you after they decided they didn't.